Hello. So, I said I'd do a little video, and I've got time this morning. So then, Rekordbox, which I'm in. Let me just whack this in full screen. Right, cool. So I've got it in performance mode. So the top left, just here. Now, obviously, put it in export mode to put it to USB. So you could put it in export mode for what I'm going to show you. Just shows up difference. If you've got a track in there, it'll just show one track, and then over here it's got memory banks, and you can switch it to hot queues, other bits and bobs. But I tend to do what I'm going to show you in performance mode because I just know my way around it easier and better. Just there. Okay, so I've got a track in that I've dropped in here, which is already here. Now what? Sometimes when Rekordbox is analysing, it can just knock it slightly out of sync. So you see where this arrow is here where I've got my cursor, you click that, and then that's where you can take your waveform in and out. So I zoom in and check that this bit is bang on here, which it just so happens on that one it is, but sometimes that line could be there. So all you do is you come to here, and you can adjust and shift the beat grid. Move all that about. I don't know if you know that or not, so that's the only reason why I'm saying it, but sometimes I have to do it. Just to make sure stuff's in the right place. So anyway, in this case it is in the right place. And you can move that obviously backwards and forwards, put it bang on the line. Okay. Alrighty, so reset that back. So you've got the whole track here. You can do all sorts. So on the first bank, which it defaults to, I've got it on hot queues. But you can have all these different things where you can input things. So the things I tend to do is have hot queues and memory queues, which you usually use in the same way. And it's totally preference. You know, some people use hot queues, some people don't. Memory queues is the same thing. But in this instance, say if I wanted to put a hot queue in at the start, or a memory queue, you just need to make sure like you've queued it to that particular location. And if you wanted to add one in, I'm on the hot queues at the moment, you can just click on that relevant area. So set hot queue A, click. So it puts that in there at that point. If I wanted another one here, for example, you could put one there. And then you can, and then what you can do with these hot queues is you can color code them. So if you right click on where the color is here, you've got all these different colors. So then you can set the color. So if you wanted to put hot queues in certain places and color code them and they meant something to you, you can do that. You can even add in a comment with the add comments bit and type whatever you want. So if you were running off a laptop, for example, it'd actually tell you, or in certain cases, if you could get it to show on a controller that's got a display, it might tell you. Probably not as likely on a controller with just a small display, or even off a CDJ. But you'd still be able to see where that point is on the waveform, like you can just here. You can see it on the waveform. Okay, so let's get rid of those. Hang on. Now, if I wanted to set a loop and to always start this with a loop, I can just start on this loop bank here, which goes however far it can go. So set a 4-bar loop. Okay, so there's a loop going. Because I've set that loop, I actually say, for example, want that to be either a memory or a hot queue. So if I set it as a hot cue, I could put it in there, and it's now got this orange circle a bit. So when I come to a controller which has got the pads, if I've got it set in hot cue mode, when I press the pad, it's already there. But it won't automatically do it and run it each time because I've just got it in an orange state. If I set it to active, it will always do it each time. So I don't tend to, if I'm using cues at the start, I don't tend to set them as red active because it can fuck it all up. So you can do it there, or in the memory cues will work just as much. So let's take that off. Let's actually go somewhere else in the track. Let's go here. Being dead particular now, trying to get it on the 0.1 because it is handy just to make sure everything's lined up, which it is. Reset back. Anywho, so if I set that same sort of 4-bar loop there, if you're on the memory cue, which works just the same way, it'll put it into the memory bank. You just click memory and just check that the time of it is right where that track is, but it is. Okay, now if you come over here and right click, you can set it as a color, so it will show up as a particular color on the waveforms. So if I wanted it as green, that is how it will show up on the waveform, so you can see where that's coming. You know it's a loop because of this. Now you can also right click on that bit and call it what you want. And then if you set it as an active loop, it will always do it. You click it on red, it will always do it. So this is what I mean by that. You could be over here, that loop's now not on. Okay, that loop's not on because it's not yellow in there. And then it's play. So because that's red and active in the memory bank, and it's probably better to do these red cue, hot cues, loops in the memory bank just here. Let's see what happens, because say your track's playing out, you've set it as red. So it will automatically switch it on. That's the difference. So as you've got that loop programmed in, it'll automatically switch it on. If I take that off, let me take the loop off. And it comes up to there and it's still orange. It won't do it. So if you're programming any sort of memory cues in anywhere, which is handy to do because you can set it so you know where your memory points are in tracks, but you can set the loops in. So you put that loop in. I'm now going to switch that back to active. But you're like, all right, well, I don't actually want that as a loop there. Okay, take that off. So you want to be further in. Do it from there. But I don't want a 4-bar loop, Gareth. All right, we'll figure out which loop you want. So I've got it on 4 there. 8. Nah, 16. All right, we'll roll with that. So once you've decided what size your loop is, once you've decided what size you want your loop to be, then memory it. So then that memory is now in from there to there. Give it a colour if you want to do so. Give it a name if you want to do so, but the important thing is then set that as active. I can switch that off now. It doesn't matter, it's there. It's set in the memory bank as an active loop. So if I come back here, there we go. And obviously you can set the size of those, but if you want to, if you listen to that and think, no, I want to change the size of it, it's probably better to change the size of it. Oops. Take it off. Go back to where you were. So change the size of it. But then put it in as a new memory, because it will remember it then on the size you've then changed it to. If you just do it thinking it's done it on the existing one, it won't. So I'll get rid of the existing one, put in the new one, set it as active, make that pink. There we go. So that's him. All good. And then if you're in Rekordbox and then you need to mess around, you can obviously just delete those out. So I can take that out. That's no longer there. Switch it off. So on and so forth. And then back on the hotkey bank, if you've got anything in here, obviously you can get rid of it, etc., etc. Let's put a different track in. So if I want it to be pedantic, and I can just see part of that waveforms out there, come down here and I can just shift it loads, or I can shift it a bit. So I'll just nudge that slightly. Yeah, cool. So I've just moved the whole beat grid across a bit. So I click on the waveform there, and it's now bang on each one at the start of the wave for that kick. That's a whole rabbit hole. But yeah, that's the edit mode you can put on there. But yeah, I put hotkeys on so I know where I am. That's just how I work. But I always stick the memory cue in as well, because I find it, you can see it easier on like a CDJ or like an RX2 or an RX3 controller. So the memory cues help, but also those loops like I was on about for you, they'll help you massively. So you can set them, especially on them shorter tracks, to go to a particular part of the track, put your loop in, whatever you want it to be. You think, yeah, I'm happy with that loop, that's great. Click it in, set it as active, and even if you take it off, if you've got it as active for when you're doing that track in future, you're not then having to press something on the deck at the end of that track whilst you're trying to faff with what else you're doing. You just know if that's set as an active loop, and you've got to make sure you've got it set as active with it being red, that it will do it every time for you without a problem, and you can be focusing on bringing the next track in while that's looping. So that's basically the loops, mate. And it's certainly how I do it. Now, if you were going to go back to wanting to get that back onto your USB, obviously you go back to export, and you can see here I've got that memory loop there. So because when you're in export mode, it's on the right hand side here, you've got your memory bank, you've got your hot cue. So if I'd actually set a hot cue there, it shows, and you can still do all the edit here, just like I could edit that and right click on the memory queue and put that in pink, so that pink bink's now appeared there. And you can, yeah, you just can't change the names of it in here. That's why I tend to do it in performance, because I just find it easier to edit and everything, personally, personal preference. But then when you export it on your USB, just check when you then go into your USB, take the track that's on your USB and drop it in here. And as long as it's showing what you've put in, you know it's come across okay, you know it's synced okay, so just make sure it syncs it across, but it should do. And that's the loops, mate. Hope that's helpful.